I read and try to explain what I think is going on in philosophy paper. Then we have a review session at the end where you guys get to spam some emotes, and that constitutes like an emote review of the paper, and it goes up on a website. As always, this is my first time reading the paper. For YouTube and other motherfuckers out there who have been like, giving me strikes and stuff, I am not endorsing these people's work. These are academic papers published in academic locations. I am reading and evaluating them. I am not endorsing them. This is just for news purposes only, really. But yeah, this is Fear, Pathology, and Feelings of Agency, Lessons from Ecological Fear by Charlie Kurth and Panu Pikala. Apologize for how I say anything that's not just like stupid easy English. And it's looks like it's forthcoming in the Philosophy of Fear book. All right, so and here we go. As always, feel free to ask questions along the way. I will do my best to answer. My first time reading it too. All right, so we got a quote from Greta Thunberg here. Is it Thunberg or Thunberg? Thunberg, it says. I want you to panic. I want you to act as if your house was on fire. It's November here in New York and it's like warm out. Our house is on fire. Okay, this essay examines the connection between fear and the psychopathologies it can bring, looking in particular at the fears that individuals experience in the face of climate crisis and environmental degradation more generally. This immediately reminds me of, we read a paper on horror movies, and that was also talking about the sort of like the operationalization of fear. It's supposed to use fear in a certain way. And that's exactly what this is already starting out as. It's like, how do you actually operationalize what makes us afraid, and then like use it to an end. Now in a movie, it's for entertainment or is, for something else. It's like to get you riled up for something, whatever other purposes the movie is trying to do. But for this, it looks like call to action in terms of environmental degradation and the climate crisis. We know, of course, that fear can be a source of good and ill. Fears of climate change-driven heat waves, for instance, can spur both activism and denial. But as of yet, we don't have a very good understanding of why eco-fears, as we will call them, shape our thoughts and actions in the ways that they do. More importantly, we also don't really understand why some experiences of eco-fear can lead to depression, PTSD, and other psychopathologies. So what you're saying is Greta Thunberg needs to do more jump scares. If it works, it might be something she should try. Like, instead of sitting and not moving, maybe she should sneak up on people and scare them. Like, new strategy for Greta. Might work. I mean, she's famous for, like, putting herself in locations to get in people's way. But, maybe she needs to start being more, like, sneaky and sneaking around people. It'd be kind of funny. Good idea, though. You've been good today, Vipers. A lot of good ideas. On top of your game. In an effort to make some progress on this front, we want to look more closely at the role that feelings of agency, our general feeling that we have enough ability to address the threats and challenges we face, play in shaping our fears. Yeah, this is definitely part of it. Like movies I like the original Alien and Aliens movies. Like the new ones are completely lacking. And what I liked about the original ones, you had like some smart, capable people that are getting screwed over by the company and a superior weapon, the alien. And it's like they're trying their best and they're failing because they have agency, but like it's just getting taken away from them. And that's one of the things I like about the original Alien franchise. It was like these people, it wasn't a horror movie with people acting like idiots. These were smart, capable people doing the best that they can and being screwed over. Or just losing to a superior force. And it's like that was overtaking them and they were starting to realize, like, an alien, sorry if there's spoilers, they ask Ash, like, who knows more than they do about the alien, what can we do to kill it? And he's like, you can't. It's a perfect organism. He's like, I could lie to you about your chances, but I'm sorry. It's like, they are up against an insurmountable fate. And it's like, they had agency, but it just doesn't matter. That's one of the things I like about those movies. Yeah. Okay. But like that's also part of like horror movies where it's like you're up against something that you don't control and like you like don't act like even if you don't act like an idiot, you're still going to die. Sock now says, I would say that AI is a company's machine for business efficient solutions that was used for public consumption, is paid by selling data. The tool aspect is not necessarily ours, as a tool that is owned and operated by the corporate interests, and then borrow this machine. I think the level of respect is based on how consumers respect borrowed objects and how people and industries own that borrowed machine. Yeah, that's a good point, where who's actually controlling the tool. So it's like, I don't own any guns. I don't. The government has many guns. We're in the United States. Other people have guns. And in some sense, I let the government have the guns because that is part of, like, you know, the government runs the military. I have to respect the military because also I have given up that, like, I don't need to hold a gun because I am not worried. Like, around here, it's pretty safe, and other people have guns, and it's part of their job to keep me safe. Like, that's what they do. So it's like, that's a good point. How much can you trust other people to be, you know, good? Like, there's only so far you want to trust the police. There's only so far you want to trust the military. Now, that may vary from place to place, but, like, there are limits on every, like, there's always going to be limits. That's why we have, in theory, checks and balances in the United States. I saw that post of yours, Vipers, where you had to explain checks and balances to somebody. But, like, yeah, it's like, that's a good point. How much can we trust these companies when they have these very powerful tools? And one of my favorite movies, again, going back to, like, you know, 80s movies, RoboCop, where the company, and I was just watching the recent one, why did they remake RoboCop? Where the company has these, like, military grade weapons that they control, and it's like, even though RoboCop is supposed to be like a cop serving the public, it really, his program is to protect, it's written into his program to protect the company and not necessarily the public. So it's like, how much can we deal with that? Maddie says, RoboCop OP has this huge cutting-edge understanding of gentrification. Oh, yeah, that's true, too. For the time. You know, I never really thought about that, but, like, that's also the case. It definitely does. Where it's like, they are kicking people, like, they're basically making it for rich people, yeah. Vipers learned yesterday that Ireland is the second safest country in the world. Iceland is the first, presumably because it's too damn cold for crime, yeah. Lots of class and race stuff in it. Oh, there definitely was a lot of class stuff in it. There was, like, you never saw, there was a black guy, I don't know if he was black, in the corporate world in the original RoboCop. And then, I mean, there were the sergeant in the police station was black, so you're seeing, like, races and things like that, but, like, yeah, it's interesting. I have to think more about that. I love RoboCop. I do. Yeah, it's a masterpiece. So, yeah, but, like, I always got the class sort of system. Like, you've got these really rich people with all the power. Structural systemic, yeah, that's fair. I was like, otherwise, the cops just in the precinct, there was like a mix of men, women, and, like, different races. But yeah, it's definitely, you've got a very sort of overarching structure, again, where the corporations, this is what made like old style cyberpunk, like the classic cyberpunk at this point, where you had, like, these just really powerful corporations with all the money, and the people there have all the power, and then there's, like, everyone else who just lives a sort of lower grade life. In a way that our culture really didn't delve into about 10 years ago. So, yeah, exactly. Like, so all of this, one of the reasons I like it so much, I think, is why a lot of people like it, is because this stuff from, like, the late 80s, early 90s, it didn't actually come about till, like, the 2010s, where you've just got these, like, maybe a little earlier, but, like, you've got these people with, like, the tech companies that are just immensely powerful, and they can just, you know, the people in charge have tons of money, can do whatever they want. Original Cyberpunk was supposed to be a takedown about corporatism. Yeah. And class issues. Yeah. And we're just there now. Nothing got taken down. It's like, it now just looks prophetic. Viper says, I love the black executive, always looking excited when his colleagues get taken out because it means a potential promotion. Yeah. He's like, all the executives are, like, completely scummy. Like, it's great. That's one of the other things I like about those movies, is there's no really good people in them. Like Rambo also, the original First Blood movie. Like, there's no good characters. Rambo is like this, you know, he's just blowing shit up. And, like, RoboCop, I mean, Peter Weller, like, he was a good cop, and then he just dies. And then he becomes RoboCop, which is sort of like, he's kind of ambiguous thing. And so it's like everyone else is like, the cops are okay, but you know, they're fucked over too. So I always like that stuff. It's like there's no real good people, and then the executives are all scum, which is great. Yeah, the frustrating is that Cyberpunk was also supposed to push transhumanism and the like, which doubled on to LGBT and trans issues. Yeah, and now we've got people arguing over that too. But like, yeah, I don't know what the future, like, whatever the next sort of thing in like sort of like sci-fi is gonna be. Viper's quotes: "The sky above the port was the color of television tuned to a dead channel." Yeah. What is that? No Crash or something? I forget which. What? See, the classic cyberpunk novels begins that way. Sock now says the best way we can see the quality of tool lending or machine lending is looking at hardware tools from Home Depot. Allows one to see how the average user and experienced user affect. Opening live neuromancer. Thank you, Vipers. Let's see how the average user and the experienced user affects a tool. In your opinion, that is AI is a net negative for the economy because the elimination of job works need to be continuing. Not gonna lie. Well, I mean, is it the AI or is it the current system we have where the tech companies control it, where we've got basically only a handful of tech companies that are in full control of the very powerful LLMs at the moment, and that's really why everyone else is losing their jobs, is because all the money is going to the few people who can afford to make the best LLMs, which I mean, there are going to be like the Googles, the Microsofts, the Apples, the Amazons, whatever it is of the world. So it's like, is it the tech itself? In part, but like we've got a lot of other problems, and so it's like, well, we have to find a way that the people are taken care of, because why should all the money just go to these people? They may have put the LLMs together now, but that was on the backs of everyone else's hard work and research, either to like the researchers in the universities who put this stuff together, or all the artists and all the writers out there who made books in the past that are now like they've been using them to you know, make the LLMs. It's like, well, okay, now they have taken all this work and made something out of it, but why does no one else get that benefit? Maddie says, but a lot of mine cyberpunk bonfire, that stuff only leaving the superficial. I can change my physical appearance and abilities on superficial power fantasy, easy aesthetic understanding. Yes, things got dumbed down, which is, yeah, it, well, you know, we got to package it, we got to sell it, you know, and then we got a product, and that's what we're making. It becomes like a cyberpunk product where it's like, oh yeah, like neon colors, and like, yeah, you get to do some really cool things with fancy tech, but like, yeah. Viper says, quote, the underlying purpose of AI is to allow wealth to access skill while removing the skilled the ability to access wealth. Yes. It's like, yeah, that's basically where it's going. You're dealing with people who can't draw. Now you can tell the computer to draw what you want, and it draws what you want. It's like you did not learn that skill for yourself. And in the immortal words of Jeff Goldblum, you didn't learn, like you didn't earn the skill for yourself, and so you have no respect for it. Bringing it back to Sock now. So it's like, yeah, what did they do in Jurassic Park? They had this genetic skill that they put it together, they productized it, and now they want to sell it, but it's uncareful, unsafe, and everyone dies. So it's like, yeah. Manny says, not just dumbed down, but by deliberately capitalizing it, still and reinforce the homophobia transfer, even while profiting even off that. Yeah, I mean, that's right. Not just dumbed down, but basically perverted into, you know, making it easier to sell just without pushing any of the good messages, just giving the same old dumb messages that like we want to get rid of. So, but yeah. It's like, yeah, what happens? You have to productize it, and then you have to, like, you know, make it palatable to the people, to like more and more people, which makes it, you know, you've got assholes in that group, and they want to just, like, you know, cater to the assholes. So yeah, it's that late stage capitalism construct of profiting off the revolution against capitalism. Yeah, that's exactly it. So I mean, everything now, it's like, oh, you want to be counterculture, we've got a product for that. So yes. Good old capitalism. Can't swallow. Late stage capitalism. And boy, have we late stage capitalism right now. I mean, I'm not so good at the political theory, you heard amazing podcast that delved into a bit. We'll drop a link in the chat, so at least other people, if they're interested. If books kill, books can kill. Capitalism turns everything into a toilet. I mean, if only toilets are useful, but yeah, it turns everything into shit. Yeah, if books could kill, yeah. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I think it was Prof was saying something about, look, people want a revolution. They are so sick and tired of the way things are at the moment that they're willing to put their faith in Trump, or not even in Trump. They're willing to do anything to get out of the current system we're in, even if that means putting your faith in Trump. It's like, well, it's like, he said it's more revolutionary than people are giving it credit for. I think he was right when he said that, because I don't see this as a vote for Trump. I see this as a vote against the status quo. And that makes enough sense to me that people would vote against the status quo. Even though the status quo, the way it was going was, I thought we were getting, like, women's rights were important. A lot of other things like supporting our allies is important. But, like, they don't care. It's like no more of the status quo. So, yeah. I'm not on my Discord. It's fine. That wasn't in my Discord. That was actually in Prof's Discord. But, like, yeah, Discord. If you want to be in the Discord, you can be in the Discord. I don't know if that link still works, but my Discord is pretty quiet. I don't post that much. You'll see the usual suspects from chat there quite often, if anyone is posting. But anyway. It's also kind of progressive to elect men who wear such copious amounts of makeup. Yeah, I mean, not everything Trump does is, like, terrible. Like, the old joke, he's normalizing makeup for men. It's like, yeah, good for him. Like, that should be normalized. So, yeah, we'll see. I don't know how bad things are gonna go. What's up, Rexler? How you doing? Yeah, so we're just trying to read this paper, but we're getting there. Or we're still on the first page. Oh, good. Yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. Like, I'm a little bit slightly under the weather. I feel basically fine. But yeah, what are we talking about? We're talking about fear and nature, the climate change at the moment. Yeah. Okay, so we have to understand why our fears develop into pathologies. What is that doing for us? Okay. With this done, we then discuss two normative implications for that we believe follow our model. Okay, once they understand how our fears affect us. The first concerns environmental education. Here we position ourselves against those who advance a don't scare the kids approach to discussions of the destruction of the anthropocentric ecological approach to discussions of the destruction that anthropocentric ecological violence will continue to bring. Rather than shielding students from the fear that facts about climate change so often bring, we should, in a broadly Aristotelian manner, helping students mold their fears into eco-courage. The second normative upshot concerns the growing tendency to pathologize fear in ways that can further harm already vulnerable individuals. Looking at how this issue manifests itself in the context of our model of eco-fear and its ties to feelings of agency not only allows us to better understand the harms that this pathologizing can do, but also how we can combat it. Progressive has lost its meaning these days. It's sad. It's like it is more than aesthetics. Yeah, I mean, I am hopeful, and I saw some post recently that Bernie Sanders was criticizing the Democratic leadership, saying basically, y'all need to, this was a vote, like, I agree with Bernie on this. Like, he was saying this is a vote against you. It wasn't a vote for Trump. It was a vote against the Democratic leadership. And they're all like, no, that couldn't be the case. And it's like, yeah, that's, I think, exactly the case. I think Bernie's right. That the old Democratic guard, that the Democratic Party guard, the old guard there needs to just go. Yeah. So, I don't know. Yeah. But people really dislike. He responded? Okay. Like, I really. people are not happy with the ways they're like interacting in the United States at the moment. Like they don't have enough money, things seem uncomfortable, and it's freaking people out. Yeah. Viper's quotes, I guess this is from Bernie. We have not even brought forth legislation to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, despite the fact that some 20 million people in this country are working for less than $15 an hour in America today. If you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mat, taking on powerful special interests and fighting for you? I think the overwhelming answer is no. And like I completely 100% agree with Bernie on that. And I think that is the perception that people have, that the Democratic Party was not working. Maybe it may have been working in their interest, but like not really doing anything that affects everyday Americans' lives enough. Like they had to be fighting for this sort of like pay increase, and they weren't doing that. So it's like, yeah. I think that's right. And I think that's part of why the Democrats lost this election. So, like, yeah. So I'm hoping that whoever is on the progressive left will gain more power in the Democratic Party. I don't know if this is going to work. I have no idea how that stuff plays out. Okay. Continuing the paper, though, but feel free to keep putting stuff in chat. Before beginning, a brief comment on our terminology. Discussions about threat-related eco-emotions have focused mainly on eco-anxiety and worry. However, there's often been conceptual confusion about what phenomena these eco-emotion labels pick out. Viper says elections are almost always referendums on the incumbents. Yeah, and I mean Joe Biden is old school Democratic Party, so that makes that fits. I'm always laughing. It's like Trump was already like the incumbent. He didn't do a good job. People forget very quickly how poor a job Trump did. But yeah. But yeah, exactly. It's not a referendum on Trump. It's a referendum on the Democratic leadership and Joe Biden. Okay. When Democrats lose this bad, they go further right. Yes, but they've been doing that anyway. So I'm hoping they Bernie, the AOCs of the world, the Bernie Sanders of the world. Hopefully something will happen. I don't know. I don't know this stuff. It probably won't. But I'm hoping that, the progressives will at least be able to band together and maybe get some more support because other people will also recognize that the Democratic leadership is, wrong. Yeah, so everyone shut the fuck up or we'll be here all night? Yeah, well, that's what's going to happen. That's why I started reading early. We've gotten all through one page so far. Okay. But, this, to be fair, one of the reasons I stream is because I know that people want to have a place to discuss stuff with chat. And that is part of the reason I stream is to give, community space, to make community space. But yes. Hopefully we'll get through the paper though before my voice gives out. Okay. For example, while many scholars purport to be talking about eco-anxiety, their discussions seem better understood as focused on our general negative emotional responses to climate change, not just anxiety, but sadness, fear, guilt, and more. Others use the label eco-fear, but seem to actually be focused on eco-anxiety. In our essay, we use the term eco-fear to refer to the emotion that is experienced in response to imminent threats of ecological damage, where this contrasts with eco-anxiety, which we understand as the emotion the emotion experienced in response to uncertainty about non-imminent threats to the environment. When needed, we distinguish between fear, anxiety, and worry, but our focus is on eco-fear. A puzzle about eco-fear, the good, the bad, and the pathological. Chocolate Mints, what's up? Yeah, good night. Good night to you too. Hey, what's up, Latvian Jesus? We got the little one, was that the bongo lizard? That's kind of cool. We can begin with some examples of how eco-fear can bring not just important benefits, but also real trouble. We do this in order to draw out the question that is our focus. How can we better understand why eco-fears become overwhelming or otherwise problematic? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, fear can be used, of course, it's a motivator. But again, you could have crippling fear, and then that's bad. Ivan, welcome in. Thanks for the raid. I appreciate it. We're reading a paper on eco-fear. And what is it to be afraid of, like climate change, and how can that be used? How are you doing? How was the rest of your stream? It's time to start a Twitch stream called The World. Yes. Nep Fox, how's it going? Hello, bitey snake thing. Looks like bitey serpent. Yeah, Ivan, thanks for the raid. If anyone doesn't know me, hi, I'm Noah. You call me Noger, Nogre, Nogreo, whatever. Just don't be a jerk about it. Is breakdancing fear an option? Sure. I mean, we're talking about eco-fear, but there could also be like a fear of dancing. Crippling sounds less fun. Yeah. But I mean, if you spend enough time on Twitch, this is one of the things I found out, is I've been on Twitch a long time now. A lot of people are at home and on Twitch a lot because they have fears of like other stuff, or they have other medical problems. And so that's why they're on Twitch so much. And you find out, it's like, okay, they can't go outside. That's why they're always on Twitch. It's like, yeah, it's like, all right. And this is how they live their life. It's like, cool. You had a fun stream. Like, chatters have been fun and generous. That is awesome. As always, if you want to go raid and run, feel free to do so. If you want to stick around, cool too. But I appreciate the raid. Yeah, we're just reading some philosophy at the moment about operationalizing fear, basically, in terms of getting people to respond to the climate change crisis. Good stream. We learned solar panels are the cheapest form of energy, way cheaper than just burning coal. Fascinating. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, good. Ivan gained a fan. That's always good. You will write an email. I'm sure she will read your email and take it very seriously. Xi Jinping, I guess. But anyway, yeah. So this is what I do here. Yeah, let me know if you did anything cool. Yeah, you can clip the world with a big Roomba. Yes, it won't work with your apartment. You need RoboCop. Yes. Nep is a skeptic if you haven't cottoned. Aha, yes. Well, there is a healthy amount of skepticism that should be going around. Gmail, exactly, yeah. I think we just start geoengineering before it is too late. We might have to. Because we're running out of like what I think are the good options, and then we're going to start running into the less good options soon, and then the not good options. And once we get to the not good options, that's going to be a lot of pain. It's worth. Hey, what's up, Unreal Brian? Who is Michael Roos? Do I know Michael Roos? Yeah. If the Atlantic herd halts were hosed, yeah. So like there's going to be some very bad things that could happen, and we have to prevent those, but the solutions are going to be bad at that point too. Yeah, so we've got some discussion. All right, so who's Michael Roos? Do I, Unreal Brian, should I know this person? Is it a philosopher? What? Oh. Philosopher Biology did a lot of pro-Darwin, anti-creation stuff. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I saw the headline on Mike Roos, but I didn't know him. Yeah, Gelfton, Florida State. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so a philosopher of science and philosophy of biology theory, evolutionary theory, Darwinism, philosophy of religion. Interesting. I should have known about his name. Oh, he was a founding editor of Biology and Philosophy. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Atheist who wants to build a bridge to believers. Good for that dude. Yeah, see, I did not know that. Okay. Interesting. Someone I should have known about, but I didn't. Cool. Well, yeah. So, you know, it's interesting. There is like generations that like where a lot of people like were born, like you have the baby boomers and you have the people kind of like pre-war. All the pre-war generation is like starting to die out really fast now. And we're also getting the like first wave of baby boomers dying too. So it's interesting. Just like you grow up, you don't notice this, but like now I'm a little older, I'm like, oh yeah, all the old people they're all gone. And now we're getting the first wave of like the people in the baby boomers who had like diseases or like something else happened to them, and they're starting to wipe out too. It's like, it's how these things go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to continue reading. We're just setting up the discussion at the moment. All right, so authors say we can start by considering what the good that eco-fears can do. On this front, social scientists have studied how individuals respond when they experience or even just learn about the devastation that climate change is bringing. They have found not only that people feel threatened and also afraid, but also that their fears can spur activism and efforts to combat global warming. Fear, for instance, can motivate individuals to refrain from air travel and other environmentally destructive behaviors. In this vein, reports from sociologists are rich in examples of people saying things like, Greta made me raise my ambitions because she made me dead scared for my future, and I am grateful for that. I can still say that to the next generation that I did all I could before it was too late. Yeah, it's like, are you actually doing anything yourself to help? Now, I know I hate these like statements. It's like, the amount of damage I personally am doing is very small. I am not a rich person. I mean, I do have a car. I drive around sometimes. Like, so that's not great. Should I be taking public transportation more? I mean, I'm in New York. I take public transportation a lot, actually. But it's like, is it really me? Like, can I say I did all that I could? Really, I'm not the driver of like climate change. True. Yeah. Knowledge is rich. Is rich knowledge? What is knowledge? And how is it rich? I have no money. Or are you wealthy, as they say to Bob Marley? He says, no. He says, my wealth is life. So that's what efficiency is the richest. I'd say knowledge over efficiency. Efficiency, you can over efficiency yourself out of like a lot of stuff. You have no, because you need no. Yeah, exactly. You think I have a low carbon footprint with farts like that? Well, compared to like major corporations, yes. Like my carbon footprint on my own is not that big. You take people like me in the aggregate, it's going to be significant. And if we all did something, it would cut it down. But again, who is really making the climate worse? Usually there's a few big companies that you can point to, like some countries with lax laws where they're just, poisoning the environment. Yeah. So, yeah, the old silent but deadly farts. All right. Authors continue. Externalities cause the prices to be artificially low for bad stuff. Yeah. I mean, one thing I have been doing is I don't really order off Amazon if I don't have to. I order direct from China, because all the stuff's made in China anyway. I'm cutting out the middleman. So it's like, well, I am still ordering stuff from China, but I now cut out the middleman. I actually think that's probably saving money and gasoline and transportation, because I'm going directly to the manufacturer. There's no middleman in the process anymore. Like, do I have a problem ordering off AliExpress? No. It works pretty good nowadays. So. Okay. But alas, not all occasions of eco-fear have happy endings. For instance, the sociologist Stuart Tannock has examined how individuals respond to ecological fears, finding that one of the strongest forms of climate denial now is based not on the claim that the climate crisis does not exist, but rather on the feeling that it is too overwhelming to think or do anything about. Empirical work confirms this. We see, for instance, that in comparison to liberals, conservatives who experience negative emotions like fear when hearing about climate change tend to respond with greater disengagement via denial, self-distraction, and substance abuse. Additionally, some may fear things which they associate with climate awareness, like having to give up fossil-intensive lifestyles, but these fears then prevent them from engaging more deeply with climate change. People may even fear experiencing climate emotions. As the climate activist Jack Weber explains, fear is the primary emotion underlying climate denial and inaction. We are afraid of the anxiety we would feel if we paid attention to climate news. Yeah, I mean, and everyone in the United States, and probably the rest of the world, has been watching the news in the last week or two about what was going to happen with the US election, and we've been feeling very helpless about everything we can do about it, and now everyone's trying to scramble to figure out what can be done about the way the United States is going. Like, no one actually knows. So yeah, what to do. But I mean, I think everyone's been feeling this sort of like, what the fuck can we do now? All right. What's worse, in some cases, eco-fears don't just block pro-environmental engagement, but actually harm the individual who experiences them. Consider, for example, the bushfires that raged through Western Australia in 2019 to 2020. The virus burned 24.3 million hectares, an area larger than Finland, destroyed over 2,750 homes, and killed at least 34 people, not to mention 3 billion animals. That's a lot of animals. Latvian says, that doesn't seem entirely right to me in an intuitive sense. I feel like fear of reckoning with it isn't what drives a Trump take, drill baby drill. Yes. Well, no. I'm not talking about, I'm thinking people now, when they're looking at the situation, they think Trump is going to go with the US, they're sort of paralyzed because they don't know exactly what to do. That's my point. It's not, it's people are afraid now. They don't know where the country is going, so they're worried. That's what I meant to say. Viper says a global issue also creates the biggest problems possible bystander effect. Fair. Yeah, the bigger it is, it's like, well, how am I going to affect any of this? So yeah. Yeah, so 3 billion animals. I hope lots of them were like insects. Probably not what they meant. Individuals whose lives were upended by the destruction and the intense fear they experienced as having everything around them burned are now being diagnosed with PTSD. For them, even seemingly innocent things like raindrops are triggering events that can leave them incapacitated. Yeah, I mean, we were flooded years ago. Like, my house was flooded, and like and any hard rain, like would like freak out my parents because like it just was like it was bad. Like flooding is scary. So yeah. Okay, we see similar trouble in more mundane cases, especially among young adults. As an example, we consider the following excerpts from an interview conducted by the psychologist Michalina Marzak and her colleagues. Quote, I've been quite good at not getting scared before, but in recent months I get more scared. I don't exactly know why, but maybe because time goes by and nothing is happening. Maybe it just takes a toll on you after some time. So yeah, when I think about it now, I feel unrest and scared, end quote. Yeah, things are scary. It's not just that individuals' experience persist, compounding fears about the climate crisis, but that these fears bring feelings of hopelessness, powerlessness, and dismay. Witness, quote, when I think about the climate situation, it's just like, it's so sad that we reached this stage that's just slipping off a cliff or running off a cliff. Yeah, it makes me question the human goodness. But then this whole situation is just kind of, it's easier to slip, maybe despair and losing trust in human nature or human beings. We live where we shouldn't, short-sighted, yeah. There was a nice article about people who live in Arizona outside Phoenix, and now that things are even drier than it was out there, there's no more water for them. And because they live outside city limits, they have no right to city water. And basically, they're going to have to abandon their houses because they just can't get the water anymore. It's like it was good for when water was plentiful, but now it isn't. Latvian says, I've never understood the hysteria quite like the urge to laugh when realizing how cooked we are. Well, you just have to understand, people are going to react in unexpected ways when they're afraid or things like that. And some people laugh. That's just what it is. You don't have to understand it. You just have to realize this is how people are coping with things that they don't understand, and it's just a reaction. It's not like they think it's funny. I'm sure they don't think it's funny, but this is just how they are physically wired. Like, it's not meant to be funny. Yeah, and we're screwing up the weather. Well, that's the whole point here, Levitt. It's well, that's the whole point, Lavian Jesus. It's not something that they want to be doing. This is more like a reaction. Like, you hit your funny bone and your arm feels weird. Like, you didn't control that. This is, I feel like, that's how they're acting too. Sorry. Like, they are reacting in this way, not because they want to be, but because it's more like they hit their funny bone and like now they just sort of like bug out. So yeah. Okay. Authors say, so we're left with a puzzle. Well, yeah, I mean, think about a phobia like fear of heights. There's no reason that your body should freak out, but it does freak out. It's like, this is just what it does. And so that's how some people are. All right, authors say, so we're left with a puzzle. While eco-fears can be a source of significant good, they can also bring not just indifference and inaction, but profound harm, depression, hopelessness, PTSD, and the like. Why is this? getting some clarity, a model of fear and its connections to feelings of agency. As a start to an answer, let us return to Australia, this time to the floods that devastated large parts of New South Wales in 2017. Here's how one survivor, let's call her Sandra, describes her experience. Quote, I got no warning, but the TV said evacuation for Lismore, where she was, and then when I rang SES for information, I could not get through. I needed clarification for my family, and I have 3 special needs kids, and they need help to evacuate. I was getting more scared and finally got hold of SES, who told me to leave now as we expect catastrophic loss. Your house will collapse because it's in the direct path of the flood when the levee tops. I said, I need help. I was told no help for you. We were condemned to a horrific night of hell. Well, that's just scary. End quote. While there's much to note in Sandra's comments, we want to focus on how her fears about her safety and the safety of her special needs children were exacerbated by her inability to get help. She wasn't just scared, but felt she had no agency, no ability to manage in the situation she was in. This feeling of lost agency then led to a vicious cycle of increased fears and a deepening feeling that the situation exceeded her ability to cope with it. Hey, what's up, Globus? Yeah, I mean, I was severely burnt out for a little while. I was not even, on Twitch. And I was a person who was always had, I would always lurk someone's stream just to, put a lurk on. I couldn't even do that for a few weeks. So it's yeah, I'm back now. Try to be back. But yeah, good to see you. Anyone who doesn't know Globus, I have not, bad streamer. I've not been giving people shout-outs. I completely forgot about shout-outs. Let's give Globus a shout-out. Should have shouted out, Ivan earlier, but brain is gone. Yeah. Globus does AI and tech news. He's if you are interested, we were discussing AI stuff earlier. If you don't know Globus, you need to go watch Globus. Globus, I got a story for you. So one of the things when I was away, I was at a conference and I was talking to this guy who works in tech, and he was I think the biggest problem with AI nowadays is that people don't have a way to communicate exactly what's going on. Because certain AI and certain stuff is it's really good. Other stuff might be being misused, but the general public has no way of understanding what is good and what is dumb and what is hype. And he's no one is actually sitting around discussing this. And I was oh yes, they are. I know someone who talks AI news every single day. He communicates this. So I gave him your link, and he was oh my God. I was like, sometimes it's twice a day. He was he's really talking AI news twice a day. I was yes, he is. So I gave an IRL Twitch link. I literally had to write down Globus_the_elder on a piece of paper for someone. So yeah, I was yeah, you should just go watch Globus the Elder and to do stuff. But yeah. So IRL Twitch link. It was good. I was he's really I think he works in the area, but he's really interested in sort of AI communication. So it's yeah. An example of underscores being annoying for SEO. Well, everyone should have a short name. Yeah. Well, speaking of SEO, my name used to get auto-modded in chat. You couldn't type in NOGRE0 in the chat because the consonants NGR would get flagged. And so for a long time, I could talk in chat, but no one could respond to me. You couldn't at me without getting auto-modded. So, that was a few years ago, but it was just sort of funny. Yeah. And then they'd have to everyone would have to manually approve responses to me. Okay, so what were we talking about? We're talking about fear and how this can be debilitating in terms of ecology. All right. Given the extent of fears and lost feelings of control agency that people like Sandra experience, it's no surprise that we see higher levels of PTSD, anxiety, distress, and depression in the New South Wales residents whose lives were upended by these events. For instance, 45% of New South Wales residents were impacted by flood reported probable PTSD compared to only 12% of those who were not affected. This isn't an isolated feature of the New South Wales floods, but rather a general finding that researchers see when they study the mental health impacts of natural disasters. But it's also important to note that the combination of fear about environmental threats and compromised feelings of agency can be problematic even when an individual's condition wouldn't meet a clinical definition of psychopathology. Yeah, screwing with people, even at a low level, if you do it with a whole bunch of people, you're going to get bad results. It's like stochastic terror. You're just fucking with too many people, and maybe some of them like are really need help, but like with the rest of them, everyone else is like doing worse overall. So it's bad when you've got these sort of like widespread anxiety inducing things. You're going to make everyone like bring everyone down a little bit, which is just going to exacerbate any other problems that they had. I can tell you this is just because when you're in New York, there's a lot of people, and when something stupid like this shit happens in New York, you can just see the overall level of craziness go up in New York because everyone's on edge, and then it's like everyone can't like handle the normal level of like stupidities around, and then things start just going wrong. And so it's like you can just see that in New York. It just happens constantly. When things are bad, just the level of stupid shit just starts skyrocketing. And it's not any one person. There are some crazy people here, but it's just like more, it just shows up all over the place. Okay. For instance, the political scientist Sarah Picard interviewed 50 young environmental activists about their emotional response to the climate crisis. She found that the feeling of anxiety, when combined with the sense of being overwhelmed, for a feeling that is a feeling of compromised agency, lead to disengagement. These experiences prevented them from taking action. What's up, Adam Fighter? What examples like these suggest is that fears are more likely to bring trouble to, for instance, trend toward pathology, to the extent that they are accompanied by compromised feelings of agency. In what follows, we develop a model of fear and its central connections to feelings of agency. While our proposal is far from a complete account, it is nonetheless sheds the light on an important route by which fears can become pathological. Adam says, I agree. I live in hurricane country, and it's not like the movies where everyone helps each other. Yeah, no. I mean, one of the funny things, Crocodile Dundee, when like the lady from New York visits Crocodile Dundee out in like the Australian outback, and he's like, there's millions of people in New York. He's like, that must be one of the friendliest places in the world for all you to get together. And she just like laughs. But the truth is, New York is actually very friendly. You have to be able to get along with people if you're going to be in New York, or else you're just going to be a shut-in. So it's like, it is actually a very sort of like respectful place overall. But then again, you also get the huge amounts of crazy, and it's like, it's not the thing. Yeah, civility kind of degrades a bit. Yeah, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. Civility goes down overall, and it gets to be messy, and that's when things go wrong. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Adam Fire. But you start just seeing things go wrong with some people. And it's like the bad people are around too, but like when everyone else is in a good mood, it's like you can not worry about the bad people because they're not as problematic. When everyone else doesn't give a shit anymore, then the bad actors become much more problematic. Okay. We start with the emotion fear, which we understand as a response to imminent threats to things we care about. When afraid, we typically undergo a strong aversive experience that presents the target of our fear in an evaluative light. What we're afraid of is seen as threatening. Romeo says, I thought when moving to a huge city, Chicago, that people would be unfriendly. I was wrong, but you don't talk to strangers on the L. That's a rule. You see, that's the thing. People aren't... One of the things my great-grandma used to tell my grandma, everyone in one of these big cities is originally, like, their families from somewhere else. They're all from these small towns. And so it's like, there might be things you don't do, like talk to people on the L, but still, that doesn't make them unfriendly, and people have to get along in cities. Like, if you're in one of these big places, or you're on the coasts, where you've got lots of people coming through, you have to be able to deal with lots of different people. It's like, you just have to get by in New York. Loba says, the one time you were in New York City, people were chill, nicer than I expected. Yes. And it's like, there are things that will piss us off, and you will see that people don't understand, and then they'll get onto the wrong side of New Yorkers. But like, that is, and those are the stories you hear about a lot. It's like, I was minding my own business and I got screamed at by like these New Yorkers. They were very terribly rude. It's like, no, you didn't understand what you were doing, and like you did a faux pas. But like, those stories get like blown out of proportion. But most of the time, most people are getting along pretty well. Like, it's not that, we're not that crazy. Like, it's the Crocodile Dundee thing. You have to get along, or else you're just gonna die. If you can make it in here, you can make it anywhere. Exactly. Thank you, Jersey boy, Sinatra. So, and he would know. So yeah. Well, yeah, I think about that sometimes. It's like, I got a job in New York. I could get by here if I want to. It's like, I can make it here. Like, do I need to, though? Yeah. Okay. So, authors continue. But fear doesn't just alert us to threats, it also prompts motivations aimed at helping us neutralize the threat at hand. While this motivation most often manifests as the familiar fight, flight, freeze response, it can also take different forms. For example, tonic immobility. No idea what tonic is. Maybe they meant chronic. And the resulting behavior will be shaped by, among other things, one's perception of the situational facts like the details of what's threatened, how soon the threat will arrive, and what routes of response are available. Moreover, while the behaviors that fear prompts will often be helpful, they can also be problematic. We might fight when fleeing. We might fight when fleeing would be the better option, or we might find ourselves paralyzed, unable to act at all. Here, the paralysis is not the freeze of the fight, flight, freeze response, but rather a consequence of us being so overwhelmed by the threat that we're not able to engage the behavioral response, fleeing say, that our fear cues up. Unreal says, so far it seems like this is mooting the avoidance of unpleasant truths because they are unpleasant. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what they want to do, is they're trying to make it so they're trying to develop a system to discuss fears, especially about climate, because that's their goal, to make it so that people actually are motivated and not paralyzed. That's what they want to do in this paper, it looks like. Okay. So, I mean, that's what they said they're going to do. I don't know how well they're going to get there or what they're going to do to actually make it work, but it's what they want to do. And even saying that makes it seem a little bit doubtful that they could pull that off in a paper, but whatever. Okay. Next, there's what we will call our feeling of agency, our perception of our ability to effectively engage with our environment. As we're understanding it, feelings of agency are part of a metacognitive mechanism that helps us non-cognitively assess whether we are succeeding as agents within our environments. More specifically, this mechanism is metacognitive and epistemic in the sense that it monitors our progress with regard to our goals, providing feedback in the form of affect that helps us recognize occasions where we should tweak or even change the strategies we are pursuing. So, roughly speaking, when our feelings of agency are high, our actions seem largely effortless and error-free when we feel confident in our ability to accomplish our goals and respond to challenges. By contrast, when our feelings of agency are compromised, we feel less confident, perhaps overwhelmed, even helpless, about our ability to effectively operate in the circumstances we're in. I just want to point out one thing. I always think about this word confident. Like, I mean, I feel like I am confident I can do stuff, but there's no good theory here. Like, there's no theory. We're just using whatever your received view of confidence is. It's like you just feel like you can do stuff. Well, I feel like I can do stuff. Sometimes I can do it, but I don't feel confident in it. What does this what does this exactly mean? I don't think anyone has a good theory of any of this. So it's like your feelings of agency are compromised when you feel less confident. Is that really what confidence is? Is your feelings of agency? I'm not sure, like, what exactly is going on here, but at the moment, they're just appealing to whatever your received intuitive view of this stuff is. So this is a little bit of hand waving. That's what I'm pointing out here. It's like, it always has to happen in philosophy, but whatever this is, like your feeling of agency, your feeling of confidence, what does that even mean? I don't know. Okay, putting this into the context of danger and the fear it provokes, one's feeling of agency is one's affectively delivered assessment of whether one has the resources and ability to address the threat at hand, where this may include one sense that one can control not just the threat but also the fear one feels. You see, there's a very complicated sense. They're trying to do a lot of stuff right here. Yeah. Putting this into the context of danger and the fear it provokes, one's feeling of agency is one's affectively delivered assessment of whether one has the resources and enough ability to address the threat at hand, where this may include one sense that one can control not just the threat, but also the fear one feels. Oh, baby words, that's read the sense 5 times to figure it out. Yeah, so really what they're saying is, do you have the power to solve your problems? If you put this in terms of power, like metaphysics, this becomes a lot simpler. Do you have the power to solve the problem, or do you not have the power to solve the problem? When you feel like you don't have the power to solve your problems, then you're unhappy. If you feel like you have the power to solve your problems, then you're good. Like, that's it. Professor Ashley's here. Oh my God. Yeah. Hey, Professor Ashley, how you doing? Let's give Professor Ashley a shout. Trying to be good streamer. Shout out the Professor Ashley. Not Porf, that's the other jackass. Prof. Professor Ashley is a game designer and teaches game design, I believe. And she streams, well, a variety of games. She's streaming a bit of a horror game at the moment, and her like analysis is top tier. So it's like, if you are interested in video game analysis, you go hang out with Professor Ashley, usually streaming on Sundays. So like, you know, this is one of these things, like, I design my own like my own game to like play on Twitch. Like, Philosophy Roulette is like, I've made my own video games before. Professor Ashley, I made a competitive Minesweeper game. So like, I have a arcade Minesweeper multiplayer. But like, I've like really thought about how we interact with philosophy and other stuff. But like, if you want to talk about that sort of thing, go hang over with Professor Ashley. Yeah. Adam says, not related to this, but statistic gives a formal definition of confidence, but it's not all regarding mental belief. Yes, I mean, I know there are confidence definitions, but that's like degree of belief sort of thing. So yeah. Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Latvius. Like, I do metaphysics. I can shift my metaphysics. I know what they're trying to say is that, look, when you feel like you have no power, that's bad. And when you feel like you do have power, that's good. But like, if you're trying to parse it with this like sort of sciencey talk here, it does not compute as well. That's just how it goes. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for stopping by, Professor Ashley. Yeah, I can't swallow really, but so far I can talk at least. Yeah. I gotta shout out Ivan. I completely forgot about that earlier. Yeah, I am a metaphysician. That's what I do. My last paper I wrote on the formal cause of diagrams. I wrote on formal causes. I did a throwback to Aristotle's theory, who did write on powers and potentialities. Aristotle was actually a very good metaphysician. Most people are not. Sad. But like, it's not easy. But like, yeah, so it's like, when I read this stuff here, it's like, well, what do they mean in terms of a easier metaphysics to understand? I can do that. Most people aren't thinking like, oh, let me just shift this sort of affectively delivered assessment of whether one has the resources, enough ability to address the threat at hand. All right, so what did I actually read on that sentence? Enough ability here. And then you've got affective. So how much affective ability do you have? That's a power. This is a power discussion. That's all this is. But it's like, you guys, you're not going to pick this up. Not because it's just like, I've spent way too much time with this shit. So it's like, this is what I look at when I'm reading these sentences. Anyway, so for those who are new, we are reading a paper on, what the fuck is this? How we can use fear to get people to be motivated to do something about climate change. So if like, you're too afraid, you get paralyzed and nothing happens, and that's bad. So here's why, it was what the authors say, here's why this matters for our understanding of fear and pathology. First, given that fear presents us as facing an imminent threat to something we care about, it will, other things equal, tend to undermine our feeling of agency. So does fear undermine our feeling of agency? Does fear like make us feel less powerful? Maybe. I mean, that does make some intuitive sense. Fear makes us feel less powerful. Or feeling less powerful is what fear is. Something in that area. Okay, author says, of course, fear is not the only emotional response to ecological crises that can affect our feelings of agency. Frustration, sadness, and the like can too. But given examples like those from Australia, from which we began, fear clearly plays a significant role. Second, our feeling of agency and their trajectory, strengthening, weakening, or holding steady, will affect our ability to effectively channel the fear we experience. In particular, to the extent that our feelings of agency are compromised, not only will we tend to be less able to address the threat at hand, but it will also be more likely that our fears will trend pathological. So, by understanding the connections between fear and feelings of agency, we get a better, if only partial, understanding of how fears can become pathologies. Alright, I don't believe any of this. Like, if I have to start, like, switching around metaphysics to explain what they're saying, like, yeah, they might be in the neighborhood, but, like, this is all going to be philosophical hand-waving here. Just is. Now, are they wrong? I don't think they're wrong. They're onto something. When you are afraid, you feel like you might feel impotent. And when you feel like you have all the power, then you might feel like there's nothing to be afraid of. Fear is power is the attempted premise. Part of the power. Yeah, it looks like fear is what is it sort of makes you feel less powerful. So like fear degrades your sense of power. That's kind of what looks like is going on in this paper. And so they're trying to argue that, all right, how can we make it so that when you feel feared, like when you feel fear, you can direct it so that you can still use your agency, still use your powers to undermine the fear. So that's where they want to go. But they're doing it in this sort of a bit more complicated language, which is okay. But it's like, it's difficult. Okay. Author's model of fear, feelings of agency, and their connections to pathology is supported by several lines of empirical work. Hey, yes, cocaine. No more fear, exactly. Thank you, DCI. You just solved the problem right there. While no one of these is decisive, the combination licenses optimism in the plausibility of our model. And you can see what happened right here. All right, they're saying, look, we don't actually know, but there's some very useful things that we can do. Yeah. Well, chocolate mints, that's right. Fear is the mind killer. But the idea, what is the mind? Source of your power. Like in fear is the mind killer. That is the source of your power, your ability to like think through problems. So yeah, so you see they had this whole paragraph like hand waving it like what their theory is, and then they're saying it doesn't matter. We've got some empirical stuff that covers everything. Okay. To see this, first consider work investigating, quote, fear appeals, end quote, that is, communications aimed at arousing fear in order to promote caution. The most familiar examples are public service advertisements aimed at combating drunk driving. These ads aim to elicit fear through images and audio of a terrible auto accident and with beer cans scattered in the street in order to implicate alcohol as the cause. While some work suggests fear appeals like these are not effective, the bigger picture tells a more interesting story. In particular, a closer look at studies of the effectiveness of fear appeals indicates not only that they can work, but that they tend to work best when they succeed in both eliciting fear and offer individuals information about how to avoid the feared outcome. For example, an image of an intoxicated person calling a cab. Levitt says, fear's a bit based in the unknown. Yes, there's definitely, they mentioned this earlier too. They want to say fear has something to do, like they have a specific one. They were saying anxiety is the sort of what they're defining. And I'm not saying it's like right. I'm just saying this is their definition. Is that anxiety is sort of like there's no specific cause of the fear. So they're, Onus on all of us is learning more. Yes, but there's no way we can all know all the things. So it's like you can't know all the stuff. So there's always going to be gray area in all of our worlds. We just won't know all the things. It's not possible. So you have to keep in mind just there's going to be limits, and how do you mitigate this? Omnifitus, are the authors addressing capital punishment? Also, fear does not seem to work in that case. No, I think they're only interested in talking about climate change and people being afraid of that. Yeah. Latvian asks, field of possibilities not yet known. Yeah, well, there's always going to be in the, the immortal words of like Dick Cheney, like the known knowns and the unknown known, like the known unknowns. Like there's always going to be, like you can always be afraid of the future if you want to be, because there's the future in some sense. We don't know all the things that are going to happen. So it's like you can't be like, oh yeah, we're going to get through everything. The only way you're going to get through everything is if like you had the book of the universe, you could like look everything up. Other than that, like, then that we don't have that sort of thing. Adam says, I've heard this way of defining anxiety as the fear of some future event, but that's hand wavy. Well, that's, yeah. Well, they're defining fear here as something specific to be afraid of, like a very specific thing that's like, attacking you, fear of a bear. But the anxiety, they're saying, well, fear of climate change, a lot of times, there's no specific thing that you're worried about. Like, there may be specific things, and those they'll call fear. Like, say, your house getting taken away by a flood. That would be a specific fear. But then, like, generalized fears of things going bad, they're calling that anxiety. Yeah. You generally don't feel fear. Okay. I mean, in some sense, you should at certain times. Like, if you're being chased by a bear, thank you for the follow. If you're being chased by a bear, like, fear might be a good motivator at that time. Now, other than that, like, maybe it's a good thing. Like, if you just aren't feeling too much fear in your general life, that's good. Taken away by bears, yeah. A is for, what was the Gashly Grum Tinies? Viper says global warming introduces energy into the system. That's what heat is, a heuristic for energy. But the climate is such a complex system that we have no idea how that extra energy will affect our human level local environment. Yeah, and I think that's definitely part of it, is that you can't point to any one thing. You're just fucking the system up. Yeah. Don't worry. Is that a threat, Adam Fighter? I don't think that's a threat, but like, it's like, don't worry, you're going to be afraid. It's like, yeah. Don't go where bears are? Well, yes, of course not. Yeah, I have been chased by a bear. I felt disdain, like, really? This bitch wants to eat you? I mean, I had a dream once where someone was trying to kill me, like an assassin. There was a sniper, but I knew that the sniper was like on like this hill by my house, and they couldn't see the floor. So I had to, as long as I sat on my floor in my room, I was fine. And I was watching TV, and it was like daytime TV, and it was terrible. And I was like, this motherfucker is forcing me to like watch daytime TV. I wasn't really afraid because I didn't think I would get shot as long as I didn't get like off the floor, but I was stuck watching terrible daytime TV. This is what my nightmares are like. Me like stuck on the floor having to watch daytime TV. I'm like, fuck. But like, yeah. Yeah. Imagine a world where mom and dad can't bail you out. Yeah. Yeah. There's legit reasons to be afraid sometimes. Okay. Okay. So where were we? Continuing, that is, fears are unlikely to be helpful when they are accompanied by diminished feelings of agency regarding the threat at hand, but they are more likely to be useful when one is afraid and feels one can take effective action. Yeah. So if they give you the tool, like if you're afraid and have the tools to do something about it, then it's all right. Granted, drunk driving fear appeals might offer thin support in our model. After all, we know more about the dangers of drunk driving and how to avoid them. So it's worth noting that we find similar results for climate change-focused fear appeals. Efforts to elicit fear as a way to promote pro-environmental behavior are undermined to the extent that the communications leave their target audience with compromised feelings of agency, but can be effective if suitable options for pro-environmental behavior are offered. Yes, give me money and I'll solve it for you. That's all you do. This is a lot like flow theory. I don't know flow theory, but okay. Even people version is scary. Everything's scary. Unreal Brian says, I would have thought your nightmares would be something like never being able to read anything again other than papers by Alvin Plantinga. No. I used to have nightmares about doing paperwork, which I currently do at my current job. I don't normally remember my dreams, although I have been in the last few weeks a little bit more, but most of my dreams are actually extremely boring. I have like the things I can remember. It's like this is what happened. I was stuck watching daytime TV. I was stuck like filing paperwork. My dreams are not that interesting, actually. All right. Okay. Challenge versus skill. Oh, that sort of stuff. I see. Take a look real fast. Okay, yeah. So challenging level, you go low to high, and then skill level low, medium, high. So yeah, so if like low challenging but like high skill, it's like relaxing to do. If it's high challenge level and you're low skill, you're like nervous. But if like you have high skill and high challenge, then you just get into it and you can just like, not like you get into the flow of doing stuff and you don't have to think. Yeah. So yeah. And I guess what their goal is here is to get the anxiety up, but then get yourself into this, like out of the anxiety over into the arousal. Maybe not flow, but they're trying to get you into this arousal area to get you to do something. So that makes sense. Okay. And so you're getting them to the suitable behaviors, suitable options for pro-environmental behavior. You're trying to get there from out of the anxiety out of the fear into the let's do something. Okay. The second line of support for our model comes from findings in trauma research. This work indicates that the combination of self-reported fear about one's safety, feelings of helplessness, and the felt lack of agency with regard to one's situation are better predictors of PTSD and depression than are assessments of the objective severity of the harms experienced. This result has been found not just in the context of trauma from natural disasters, but also the experiences of survivors of domestic violence, torture, and war. Additional research shows that interventions helped at helping trauma survivors restore their sense of agency are effective ways to address PTSD and depression. While these trauma findings are based on correlational studies, the combination of them suggests that there is a causal role for compromised feelings of agency in the development of psychopathology. Say your understanding of emotion has changed a lot over your life. Yeah, like I think even the science has changed a lot over, last 20 years. So what we used to think about it versus like what we think about it now, very different. These trauma examples, especially war and natural disasters, are also structurally similar fears about ecological crises with regard to the underlying uncertainty about both the threat and how to respond to it. The lessons learned from this work lend support to our proposal. Okay, again, like I said, their hand-wavy thing, this fits in with this other hand-wavy stuff. That's fair. That the idea that there's a connection between feelings of powerlessness and feelings of fear, it's like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, before I forget, I should give our buddy Ivan Neal a shout out. Ivan, let's see if he's giving me a lurk. I appreciate the lurk, Ivan. I don't know if he's still here. But thank you, Ivan. He gave us a raid. Ivan talks science and philosophy and just generally intelligent discussion. He really likes his rationality discussions. And so it's like if you want some more smart discussion about he's got a physics PhD, so you can talk about like science. He's got good takes on, tech, things like that. So he gave us a raid earlier. Thank you, Ivan, and go check him out if you don't know Ivan Neal. Adam says, these days I am more aware of the concept and the distinction between emotional pain versus physical pain. Yeah. And that one heals slow and the other heals fast by comparison. Yeah. Depends on how bad you're getting hurt, though. That's true. Sayhub says, I wrote a paper on emotion. My conclusion was I was a vehicle driven by the subconscious in terms of favorable or unfavorable outcomes. I mean, sure, could be. I don't know if that, you need a pretty beefy psychological theory about the unconscious or subconscious to get that working, but fine by me. Okay. Where was I? Yeah, so we're down here. Finally, research looking at what's called one's sense of agency enriches the picture by pointing to a causal connection that runs in the opposite direction, from fear to feelings of agency. More specifically, this work focuses on understanding our automatic, implicit feeling that the physical actions we initiate, the outcomes they have, and things we produce. In the current context, this work is interesting because research has explored how emotions affect our feeling that we are the causes of what we do and what happens. These studies suggest that in comparison to control conditions, individuals who are made to feel afraid by the threat of a painful shock or a fear-inducing vocalization, like someone yelling yikes, show a significantly degraded sense of agency. Okay, again, more evidence that fear and power, how you your feelings of how powerful you are versus how afraid you are related. Taken together, these results sharpen our understanding of the relationship between fear, feelings of agency, and pathology. More specifically, we can understand fear as a distinctive danger avoidance mechanism, one that attunes us to imminent threats to things we care about. See, I mean, this sentence right here, this has no basis in what they said above. It's probably true. But the fact that we can understand fear as a distinctive, they did not argue for distinction, like being unique, danger avoidance mechanism. They didn't actually talk about danger, in how it avoided anything. What do they mean by avoidance? And that it attunes us to imminent threats. They did not talk about attunement there either. This sentence is just it is probably true, but it was not established by any of this stuff, or at least not specifically established in this paper. that's what all this research was saying. That muddies binding fear to danger avoidance. Yeah. Like, yes. So it's like, they probably shouldn't have said that, but this is like one of these things where it's like this is what they're thinking and they wrote it down. But in a philosophy paper, it's like, even though it's true, did you justify that sentence? And the answer is no. Yeah. People jump out of planes. Yeah, it's like it happens. Okay. Feelings of agency can then be seen as a more general tool for assessing our ability to interact effectively in our environment. Again, not something they argued for, but like, yes. Combining this suggests that when fear is combined with moderate to high feelings of agency, it will tend to be healthy, that is non-pathological, and instrumentally valuable. And this is what Vipers was pointing out, that there's like, you can, when you have agency, you don't just get the fear that paralyzes you. Okay. Instrumentally valuable, yeah. But fear and low decreasing feelings of agency are a sign that things have taken a turn for the worse. Moreover, while the two systems are distinct, they also interact. Fear, as a signal of imminent threats, will tend to weaken feelings of agency. Similarly, yeah, see, this I think was argued for above. Like right up here, these papers were doing that. Similarly, while strong feelings of agency will tend to help one effectively direct one's fear response, compromised feelings of agency will generally undermine effective fear-driven responses. Okay. All this raises questions about what we can do to encourage better fear experiences, an issue that we will discuss in the next section. But before getting to that, it's worth pausing to consider how our model helps us make sense of the puzzle from the last section. More specifically, our model predicts that when eco-fears are accompanied by positive feelings of agency, feelings that one can do something about the environmental threat faced, they will tend to promote pro-environmental attitudes and actions. But to the extent that one's feelings of agency are compromised, one's eco-fears will be more likely to be sources of trouble, even pathology. Moreover, what people fear in the face of ecological issues will be impacted by individual personality differences and social cultural influences. Here, too, there's potential for trouble, as when, for instance, a climate denier's feelings of agency are undermined because they feel it's impossible to engage with climate matters in the social groups they are part of. With this progress in hand, the balance of the paper discusses two normative implications that we think follow from what we've learned so far. Yeah, Unreal Brian, exactly. We hope you are having a pleasant fear experience. Please like and subscribe. But, the joke there is like, yeah, that's why you go to horror movies. That is exactly why people like that stuff. They are having a pleasant fear experience. Like, I saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time not that long ago. That's a great fucking movie. I had a very pleasant fear experience. Like, it was wonderful. So I was like, yeah, it was a lot of good times. So it's like, that's a good question. Did it make me feel like I was like, it was a horrible thing, but like, I didn't actually like, it was like, whatever, like suspended disbelief. It was like, it was cool. Say, Hub says, well, more often than not, awareness will almost always reduce feelings of fear and anxiety. True awareness, not simply informed. Yeah, but I think that is what they're basically saying here. That's what they're getting at, is that if you understand enough about what can be done, like that level of awareness, then you can be motivated to take action. But you do need to know enough. You need to be aware enough about what you can do specifically. So I think that is their point. Is like right along what you're saying. Terrible wine. It was cooking wine, basically. Okay. From eco-fear to eco-coverage. Can I post a link? You can just type... you can. If you're looking for the paper, you can type exclamation point paper. And it will be in the show notes, both on Twitch and on YouTube, like in the description. So exclamation... No one's asked me in a while, but exclamation point paper in the Twitch chat will bring up the paper. I won't if you're on Kick. I don't know if I have anyone actually watching on Kick. Nope. I might start broadcasting on YouTube again. I might try that. But, yeah, we'll see. Yeah. So let's see. Is there any other commands you guys should know about? Yeah, like the socials, because people were asking about the Discord paper. Um, nothing, nothing critical. Just I have like some fun ones here. So this is the low effort. Low effort comments are subject to removal and ban. This includes, but is not limited to, profane or vulgar statements made for their own sake and tedious trolling. Tedious trolling will get you banned. Like, people have tried to even be like remotely bad trolls, and like they've gotten banned fast. Like, it just happens. And I support that. Okay, yeah, you have to be at least a halfway decent troll before you are allowed to be a troll. Okay, from eco fear to eco courage. Within environmental educational circles, researchers are increasingly concerned about both how to inform children about the climate crisis and what should be done to help them manage the strong negative emotions, fear, anxiety, guilt, anger, and more that often emerge as they come to understand the threats and anthropocentric climate change poses. Yeah, and as I was saying earlier, I feel like this is actually a very relevant paper to our current situation, because of a lot of people are expressing a lot of fear about the direction of the United States at the moment. So it's like, you can also think about this in that way. What can you do to make a positive political impact in your community right now? Because you can. So it's like, if you can think about how you still can have positive effects on your community, how you have power to do that, maybe that will make you feel less bad. Okay. A prominent early line of thought on this front emphasizes the need for a protective approach. Advocated perhaps most forcefully by the environmentalist David Sobel, the basic idea is that because the truth about environmental problems like climate change is so likely to elicit strong negative emotions, and because children are unprepared to deal with these emotions, we need to approach climate change education in a distinctive and cautious manner. More specifically, Sobel maintains that rather than presenting children with fear-inducing facts about climate change, as is typically done, we should be working to get children more engaged with and in the environment. According to this thinking, adults presume that if children are exposed to bad environmental news before they are able to deal with it, and because they have strong connection with the environment, they will start to avoid environmental issues and natural environments altogether. Sobel calls this ecophobia. Although many have questioned Sobel's presumption that it's possible to shield children from distressing ecological information, his proposal has been internalized by many classroom teachers. For instance, Maria Ohala has examined teachers' attitudes towards the climate change emotions felt by their students. She's found that the vast majority see these emotions, especially negative emotions like fear, anxiety, anger, as irrational, responses that should not only be discouraged but silenced or ignored when felt. Of course, there's much that this line of thinking gets right. Our emotions can get the better of us, and we know that immersing children and adults in the outdoors can help foster interest in and concern for the environment. But while Sobel and others are correct to emphasize these points, their alternative is too extreme. Implicit in their thinking is the assumption that fear is deeply, even inherently, problematic. We disagree, and we're not alone. The core of our concern goes as far back as Aristotle. Oh, all right. Hey, we're going to get some Aristotle here. Look at that. More specifically, on Aristotle's account, emotions undergird virtues, and fear is the emotion that undergirds courage. As he sees it, one cannot be truly courageous without also being afraid. The courageous person not only fears things that are painful and destructive, but will face them because it is noble to do so and base not to. Sorry. Moreover, facing our fears, learning to grapple with and productively channel them is central to how we learn to be courageous. This is just a general Aristotelian maxim of learning by doing. Chocolate says, not sure they're talking about here, but there are studies claiming emotions are important for being able to reason. Nep says, but hey, Aristotle says we were right. Best argument. Yeah, this is an appeal to authority. But appeal to history, appeal to authority. But that's what they're saying. They're saying these people say don't do this. Other people say do this. They're on the do this side. Chocolate, that's an interesting point. Again, this is a lot of sort of like them hand waving around saying, look, you can't just do, but their point is not so much hand waving as that you don't want to take the overly simplistic view that the fear emotions are bad. And I agree with them there. Like, if you're just going to say, oh, it's all bad to be afraid, no, there are other perspectives out there, and being afraid may be the correct thing to do in certain circumstances. Yeah. And that's Latvians, yeah, exactly. You can definitely be part of a tradition and a history, and that is legit. But like, that's what I'm trying to get at here, is that they're not making a super strong argument, but they're saying should not be the only one way to look at the problem, and in that sense they're 100% right. There's a long history and a long sort of tradition in looking at things a different way. And so if you're only looking at it in one way, especially in sort of like, this is the ethics, it's not like we have disproved that fear and courage are related in any way. That's not the case. I know. Well, hey, look, I've told you guys before, I don't know if everyone's here, but I've like ruined myself streaming. Like, I've overdone it, and I've like messed myself up. So it's like, I do need to be a little bit careful. I'm not no spring chicken anymore. Even then, I couldn't do this. Yeah. But you're in that chair, Biak, yeah, you are. Yeah, I mean, streamer, it's like, dance, monkey, dance. Like, go read that philosophy paper, Noah. It's like, yeah, I know. So, yeah. Okay. So they're quoting Aristotle. What we need to learn to do, we learn by doing. For example, we become builders by building, lyre players by playing the lyre. So too we become just by doing just actions, temperate by doing temperate actions, and courageous by courageous actions. My name is Noah, yeah? Yes, my name is Noah. Noger, No Gray, No Grayo, whatever. Some people call me No Giori. I don't have, there is no official, way of saying my name. So, feel free to make something up if you really want to. Developing this a bit, Aristotle's idea seems to be that by learning to act in the face of fear, one comes to understand one's fear. One comes to understand not just when one will be afraid, but also how fear affects one's attention, thoughts, and actions, as well as what one can do to enhance or better direct its influences. And I think this is a fair thing. Well, your legal name was nobody no longer go for it. Is GG for anyone who knows me. There you go. Yeah. So, good game, say Hub. And I think the point here is that, and the Aristotelian point is that, look, if you never experience fear, you will be missing out on part of the human experience, and you will not know how to handle yourself at that time, because you probably will experience fear in your life, and if you have no experience with it at all, then you will be in a worse position. So it's like, yeah. Crucially, on this picture, fear is not something that one overcomes or gets rid of as one becomes courageous. Rather, one's fear remains there as an essential component of courage. What changes is one's understanding of one's fear and one's ability to better harness its effects on one's thoughts and actions. Finally, on Aristotle's account, we will often need to not only learn to temper the fears we actually experience, but also encourage fears that we don't typically feel. I mean, do we have to do that? I don't know. This too is essential for forging the right kind of link between fear and courage. These newly developed fears are essential to helping us, for instance, better appreciate unnoticed dangers or avoid acting from a foolish fearlessness. I mean, you want to have, I mean, I don't know if you have to cultivate fear, but you have to understand certain things are dangerous. It's like, yeah. So it's like, okay. I don't know how you like induce new fears. Like, that sounds a little weird, but like, you do have to understand the relations if like you have not had a certain fear. Like, okay, do I have to induce like arachnophobia in myself? No. But like, yeah. Yeah, like cultivate hysteria. Why would you do that? But you do have to understand what a hysteria might be for you. Like, that's fair. Like, have you got yourself worked up into like sort of a crazed state before? You can do that if you want to. I don't suggest it, but you can do it. It's like, yeah, it's like, be on like, you know, don't eat enough food, don't be on enough water. You can be like a little out of your head, get yourself worked up about something stupid. It's like, yeah, just turn your TV on. Well, this is why I stream sometimes. It's like, you want to have like a little bit of discussion with people without like the madness going around. So, part of the reason I do this. But that's why we talk about this stuff. So you can have different perspectives on how to deal with the anxieties and like sort of the fears that are going on. So this is a topical paper at the moment. Okay, moving from the Aristotle of the past to the eco-emotion scholars and environmental activists of today, we see others emphasizing the importance of developing courage in the face of environmental threats. For instance, the legal scholar Valeria V. Weiss and the sociologist Rob White note that standing up and speaking out, especially when the protagonists are rich, powerful, and dogmatic, is always going to be hard, and this includes for those involved in resisting ecocides. All of these struggles require considerable courage. Similarly, the Extinction Rebellion activist Susie Orbach writes that, quote, "We need to accept our own feelings of grief and fear. In doing so, we will build a movement that can handle the horrors we are facing," end quote. And as the NASA climate scientist Kate Marvel maintains, quote, "We need courage, not hope. Grief, after all, is the cost of being alive. Courage is the resolve to do well without the assurance of a happy ending," end quote. I mean, is that really what courage is? I don't know, but like, there's almost no guarantee that things are going to work out. Very rare. So, Adam says, "Do or die situations are go simulations for fear training." Yeah. So like, you can definitely get yourself into positions where you have to face fears, but like, yeah, it's like, do I need to go like induce arachnophobia? I'm not afraid of like spiders, but like, I know to avoid them. Do I need to have the fear of spiders in order to know to avoid them, or will I get like stupidly lenient around them or whatever it is and let them bite me? It's like, no, I don't need to induce arachnophobia. But like, yeah. However, historically speaking, say Hub says, humans always react stronger to small upsets, forecasts, and potential pitfalls of any kind. A bit of an evolved trait. Yeah, I mean, there's it's called like hyperbolic discounting. You always sort of treat something in the immediate future as much more valuable than something in the distant future because, you know, world's uncertain. And so I think it's like it may be sort of like an evolved trait to value like bird in hand is worth two in the bush. Like, could be. Frank says, "Hey, what's up, Frank? If you come from a land with non-dangerous spiders and move to a land with dangerous spiders, maybe you would be served by inducing a phobia. Perhaps, like, say an American moved to Australia. I mean, that could be the case for someone like that. But, I mean, how much do you really need to, like, induce the phobia to learn that you should avoid the spiders? I mean, imagine anyone moving from America to Australia or something like that. Crazy. But, yeah, maybe. But like, again, that would be a very specific thing. Like if you were going to a place that you really didn't understand the flora and the fauna. Like say there were like, say, evil plants or something, like man-eating plants, something you have no experience with where you grew up. Then maybe you would have to really relearn how to interact with your environment. Hey, what's up, Dame Karen? No one needs arachnophobia, especially if coming to Australia. Yeah, so a photo of a bird eating spider, eating a huntsman spider. Yeah, like all sorts of stuff. Gimpy. Yeah. So the masters of discounting the future and going for immediate gratification. Your cats. Yeah, there is something to it. There's been studies that show kids who grew up in impoverished households they were calling it, well, less impulse control, but like it really isn't, because kids who grew up in impoverished households could not rely on there being food in the future, so they were always taking what little food they could get at the time. Kids who grew up in non-impoverished households would be willing to wait for a greater reward in the future. Like they were giving the kids marshmallows, so it's like, here, you can have one marshmallow now, or like 10 marshmallows if you wait a few minutes. And the kids from impoverished households took the food now because they had been trained to not trust there being food in the future. So it's like, these might be learned. It might be in some evolutionarily determined, but it looks like it can also be trained. So yeah, you're arachnophobic and live here, doesn't help. Yeah. So, oh, it's a real mean nettle. Oh, okay, I didn't know that the Gimpy was super painful. Yeah, so you might have to be trained to avoid those, and that's fair. But again, it's like, do you need a phobia of that? Do you need a fear of it? Yeah, maybe. And so it's like, how much fear? Appropriate levels, I guess. So All right. So I guess, yeah. So maybe there are fears you need to learn in that case. So, all right. Say Hub says they did say where spiders met with a reflection in a mirror and they even reacted with fear, so even spiders were afraid. Well, I mean, not all spiders, like if you don't react to yourself, like they may naturally fight with other spiders. So if you see another spider, they may react with fear because that means a fight's coming. Now, certain animals will react to their own reflection and recognize it's their own reflection, and then they won't react with fear. And those are like sort of the smarter organisms. But like, yeah. So, but I mean, I'm not surprised if you run into another one of your kind that you might be likely to fight with. Like, yes, that will cause fear. You can induce fear, but you can't induce phobia. Yeah, that's fair. Unreal says, I did that. I'm still unlearning bad eating habits. Mom and I had some rough years when you were laid off. Yeah, that's what happens. And it gets ingrained. So it's like, that's part of the issue. Adam says, I'm glad you're walking us through this paper. I'm learning a lot more from the way it's picking at my brain. Yeah, well, that's the point. Cheers. God, this is bad wine. I could have bought better wine. Okay, so where were we? Nafis says, I saw myself in the mirror about 10 years ago and my doctor said, don't do it again. You might not survive it next time. I mean, are you a Gorgon? Are you a Medusa? Like, you gotta be careful about that. Yeah. We gotta restructure the structuring structures. Yeah. Yeah. So, you got... Everyone has a different, everyone lives in a different place. You have to react to different things in different places. You gotta learn this stuff. What was it? I went to Europe and I asked my brother, apparently there's a lot of pickpockets in Europe. My brother was like, that's ridiculous. Like, it's not a problem. It's like, you don't be we're from New York. It's like, we understand, don't go to stupid places. You will get robbed. It's like, don't do that and you'll be fine. It's like, okay, don't do that. Yeah, but I have a sense of where the dumb places would be. What are the dark corners, the alleys where there are too many people walking around that you're going to get bumped into. It's yeah. It's I already understand that. Am I afraid of pickpockets? No. But I understand don't go down that dark alley. And I was going to New Orleans years ago and my friend was even compared to New York, you have to be afraid in New Orleans. Don't go even anywhere near anything. It's they will kill you. It's okay. In that case, I will not even get anywhere near any dark alleys in New Orleans. Because it is much more dangerous. New York is a relatively safe city, actually, compared to how many people there are. But you go other places, you can get way worse messed up in other cities here in the U.S. But it's that's the idea. It's you have to readjust your fear levels. Say Hub says fear can be rational and irrational. Phobias and PTSD hinge on the belief that death or something of the like is imminent. Yeah, that's fair. So, that's the next level. But the question is, you need the fear. That's the point of the paper, is that you need the fear in a healthy way to actually take action and then make the world a better place. Okay. So, authors say, though not typically made explicit, observations like these clearly bring a broad Aristotelian account of courage into the conversation about how we should respond to pressing environmental threats like climate change. But while noting the importance of eco-courage, as we will call it, is important, this is typically where the conversation stops. That's a problem. Without a better understanding of what eco-courage is, how it is related to emotions like fear, and what we can do to cultivate it, we are missing what really matters. What about taking a flashlight into dark alleys? Will that help? Depends on the alley. Nep says, I think there would be a correlation. If you have enough flashlights to make the dark alley bright enough, it would be safer. Again, depends on the alley. That may just get you in a lot more trouble. Going down an alley with a lot of light, they may not like that. Say Hub says, I sort of got over my fear of the dark after my skin began getting light sensitive to an extreme. Yeah, sometimes you have to. That happens. Phobias are never helpful because they're irrational. Yeah, the fear can be rational, they're saying. Phobias are not. Adam says, I would guess to use the gym approach for fear exposure. Start low, go slow. I don't know how that works. I know there are people immersive things where they just throw you out of a plane if you're afraid of heights. I don't know what the psychologists say about that, how to fix it, because it's irrational. I don't know if there's any rational fix or what exactly you need to do. I am not a psychologist. Do not take my advice for this stuff. Chocolate Mint says some of those flashlights make pretty good clubs. Yeah, that's also the thing. Like if you come down to a place with one of those big flashlights, they may see that as a weapon, and then you also have to be worried. Okay. Pro tip, giving them your wallet lets you probably not get shot. Making them think you're a cop is a good way to get shot. It's like, yeah. It's like you don't want to die for paper. Yeah. Yeah, and Vipers is giving, so Vipers knows what he's talking about. There we go. Okay. All right. As a first step towards a more complete account of eco-courage, we aim to combine insights from Aristotle's account of courage with our model of fear and feelings of agency. Not only does this help us fill in some of the gaps in current thinking about eco-fear and eco-courage, but also provides an alternative to the "don't scare the kids" proposal we get from Sobel and others. Yeah, better not stir things up. Well, I'm not telling anyone to go like running down dark alleys. It's not generally like, why do that? Like, what are you looking for? Dame Karen says they do have exposure therapy, but possibly the disadvantage of being a psych major. I know what they'll do, so I'll not get treatment for arachnophobia. Yeah. Like, yeah, I don't know what the cure rates are or the benefit is of any of these things, so I wouldn't want to recommend one over the other. So you're saying we should do exposure therapy on you when you're not expecting it. There was what was it? Who's that comedian? Female gay Ellen. Ellen had a special. Ellen had a TV show and then got canceled basically because she was such a god awful terrible boss. And part of her recent comedy special, where she was kind of like making a little bit of a comeback, she was saying how she would basically do this. She would just like, people were afraid of like snakes, and she would have like fake snakes drop on them from the ceiling. No, you don't do that. Like, and the person would freak out. And it's just like, you are not only a terrible boss, you are an epically terrible boss. And it's like, she was like, I was a comedian. I never went to management school. I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. It's like, yes, but that's like epically bad, like epically terrible. So yes, like, don't actually do that. Like, you went from a beloved person to kind of hated. Not wise unless you're a vigilante superhero with hidden skill and power, correct? Dame is warning Frank. Oh yeah, she's a worse boss than you've heard. Well, that's what she was saying in like her special. Like, this is like her saying it. And she was like, she was kind of like making a little bit light of it. She was like, when I say it like that, it does sound especially bad. But she was like, at the time, it didn't seem as crazy. Yeah. Currently, the Lions are losing. One of your neighbors is screaming his full head off. Football, what are you going to do? Yeah. Now, Fox, on a side note, there's good data in cities turning off the lights at night to keep crime rising significantly. So the darkness of the dark alley might be a significant part of the problem. Quite interesting topic to know. Could we save lives with more lights? I mean, yes and no. Or are you just pushing the crime around? When you turn the lights on here, will the criminals just go someplace else? Will they just react? I mean, there's definitely something to that. It's just like, are you actually solving the problem you think you are? Or because I remember there was a study out of England where they put like cameras on a certain corner, and they were like, hey, we solved all the crime on this corner. And then you look at the statistics, the crime just moved over one block. They just were pushing stuff around, and eventually the camera broke, and then the crime came back. Did you actually solve anything, or did you just change the statistics? So I don't know. But it's definitely worth investigating. Frank says these are the things she was comfortable sharing. Yeah. Well, this was a part of her special, so yes. But like, yeah, I don't know. Unreal says there's plenty of crime here in Detroit in the glare of daylight. Yeah. So like, again, what exactly are we doing? I don't know. Dame says exactly, I think lighting moves crime around rather than stopping crime or increasing it. Yeah. And eventually, if things get bad enough, as Unreal Brian is saying, in Detroit, people don't care anymore. It's not about, like, the lighting itself is not solving crimes or stopping crime. So, yeah. All right. Authors begin by endorsing two Aristotelian ideas. First, we agree not just that fear is central to what eco-courage is, but also that being afraid in the face of things like the climate crisis is central to our ability to become more eco-courageous. Second, we also agree that in order to become more eco-courageous, we need to engage with our fears. That said, we find the Aristotle's learn by doing maxim and the quick examples he gives to illustrate the idea don't say enough about how we should go about engaging with our fears. It's here that our model can help. As we've seen, the way we respond to imminent threats is shaped both by our fear and our feelings of agency. This in turn suggests that there are two complementary ways that we can engage with our fears that can promote courage. First, we can work to shape our emotion, our fear, for the better. Second, we work to enhance the resilience of our feelings of agency. Dame Karen says, I mean, don't get me wrong, so I can feel safe walking around, but don't overstate its effects on crime. I know, it's like, and guess where there's a lot of darkness? Not in the city. It's very dark in the woods. Is there any crime in the woods? No. Or very little. So it's like, it's not the darkness. It's sort of like this sort of complex interaction between people, lighting, and neighborhood. I mean, and that's not to say there's a lot of crime in small towns too. So it's like by percentage, like there's a lot of violent crimes in small towns sometimes, but like there's just so much less of it because there's so few people there that it doesn't get as noticed. So yeah. Say Hub says, I feel like courage is similar to PTSD or phobia, just an inverted expression. Well, they're saying it's inverted fear, not PTSD or phobia. So like that, the whole point here, Say Hub, is not that it's a PTSD or phobia, it's that it's the opposite of fear. So yeah. Frank says courage is a trick. It's a fake idea that makes people willing to be victims. Well, they're saying courage here is not the way they're defining courage is it's that the ability to like channel your fears and make something and like, you know, press through. So like in terms of the climate crisis, you do not become paralyzed thinking about how the earth is fucked, and instead you take action to, you know, work on climate change. So it's like that is not they don't think of that as a trick. Nep Fox says space is very dark too and no crime at all. Good point. Dame Karen says there's a lot of crime behind closed doors. That's where we need to concentrate if we really want to reduce crime. Yeah, I mean, people are always complaining about fraud and like this, and like, you know, people stealing from the government. But always there's much more stealing from employees from the employers. It's always wage theft is always a bigger amount than stolen wages by the employees. So it's always more corporate crime is just dressed up and looks a lot better. So it's like, why are we really worried about the low level like crimes in the street in some sense when corporate crime is way bigger on like a much more massive scale? That's not to say we want like to just let all the petty thieves out either. I'm just saying the corporate thieving is huge. Wage theft versus other theft. And let's see if I'm right. I think I'm right, but we'll find out. Thank you, Vipers. Wage theft. When employers steal from employees, yes. And so like this is the thing. You see, like the robbery, it's like it's nothing compared to like all of this shit. Like it's just crazy. Yeah. Dame Karen says also domestic violence honestly comes from the same place as other sex crimes. Yeah, every damn day. Exactly. So that's the issue. What are we actually solving with the lights? That like little sliver at the bottom with like robberies? That's really not where we should be focusing our efforts. I'm not saying we should just allow robberies. I'm just saying it's not actually like comparatively. It's like the lighting isn't doing anything. Say Hub says there's stupid courage like that guy some balls, and there's hopeful courage like standing out in a crowd, speaking of resisting the bystander effect. Yeah, and that's what these people are trying to get. They're trying to get you to stand up for eco rights. Latvian says, don't worry, more cops will shoot your dog will help. Yep, exactly. Darkness might suppress the white collar. So maybe that's exactly what we need. We need more darkness. So that would suppress the white collar crime. Okay, so where were we? Yeah, how do we engage our fears? Purchase flashlights for every IRS agent. Exactly. It's here that our model can help. As we've seen, the way we are... Oh yeah, I read this. Okay, in order to better see what deploying these strategies might look like, consider examples where one would want to become more eco-courageous. Yeah, damn Karen. I don't know where you are, but here in the U.S., cops sometimes when they go to someone's house and they see a dog, they'll be like, "The dog is making me fear for my life," and they shoot the dog. Um, yeah, it's not good, but like, yeah, it's a thing. Okay, situations where intense climate fears leave one so overwhelmed that one is unable to engage in pro-environmental action, protesting, encouraging collective action, etc. Two, situations where climate fears in combination with feelings of hopelessness or powerlessness leave one unable to engage in pro-environmental action. And three, situations where because of a lack of fear or a mutation of one's fear into vices like cowardice or denial, one fails to recognize, much less act to address, the imminent danger posed by, say, a new plan to lower fuel efficiency standards. You're in Australian, cops don't shoot very often anymore. Yes, come to America. And things get shot here. Unreal says it's legit, but I hear people say that pizza delivery is more dangerous than being a cop. Yeah, it usually is. Most jobs. Being a cop is actually not, in the grand scheme of things, being a cop is not that dangerous a job. Like driving around in trucks is like more dangerous. Yeah. We're not that bad. I mean, most of America is really a nice place. Like it is. But we just have some problems. Yeah, I mean, there are legit things to be afraid of, but then there's also a whole lot of nice stuff in the United States. So it's like, you don't want to overstate how crazy things can get. Yeah, it's like there's some spots you shouldn't go. The old thing from Casablanca. It's like, would you be afraid if the Germans came to New York? It says, there's some places in New York you should recommend you don't come. But like, everywhere else is okay. Most of America is voting a criminal as a leader. I know, yes, that doesn't change the fact that most of like places in America aren't that bad. Yes, we have some crazy people in charge, but the United States itself is like, we've got some wonderful national parks. Like, I suggest you go visit the Grand Canyon. Like, that's a lovely place. So, I mean, that's my point. It's that the country and the people overall are not the leadership. And that's how I take most places are. Start of September, I went to LA and Maryland. Pretty okay. Exactly. I mean, LA and Maryland, I've been to LA briefly, and I've been through Maryland, I think, once. And they're okay. Yeah. Best advice, America's made of people. Oh, really? Okay. Want real change? Get out of there and start making it. Yeah. The only trouble with America is that it's full of Americans. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and is your family terrible? Like, why were you visiting them if they were terrible? See, we've got nice people. We've got Dame Karen relatives. So there we are. Okay, with these cases in hand, we're now positioned to see how two strategies for developing eco-courage efforts aimed at fear or feelings of agency differ. Deploying the first strategy. In cases like 1 and 3, we have situations conducive to the first strategy where we aim to shape our fears for the better. More specifically, the idea is that by, say, exposing oneself to news of imminent climate threats, one can come to better understand not just what one will be afraid of, but also how one's fear affects one's attention, thoughts, and actions. One can, perhaps with the help of others, then use this understanding to help oneself assess things like whether one's fears are outsized, and if so, how to address them. In so doing, one is working to change one's emotional disposition, one is working to change fear itself. Yeah, so if you never hear any bad news, all of a sudden you hear bad news, you're going to freak out. Maybe you should hear a bit more bad news to vaccinate yourself against worse news so you don't freak out. Yeah. Yeah, stories of immigrants eating pets. Well, the stories worked. At a practical level, there are various complementary ways this could be done. For type 1 cases where intense fear blocks action, reappraisal techniques that help individuals downregulate their fear show promise as a way to avoid paralysis that blocks pro-environmental motivations. Yeah, so you can, again, this is what we were saying, little bits of stuff to make you less freak out. In a similar way, similar efforts to engage in, say, breathing exercises to dampen intense fear can help, as can journaling activities where one both writes down past episodes of intense eco-fears and reimagines how one could have acted more courageously. Often a prerequisite for these kinds of methods is work which helps people to receive validation for their fear, normalize it, and explore it with trusted others. Yeah, so go get some therapy. It's good for you. But efforts to change when and how one feels eco-fear can also be used in type 3 cases where one fails to be afraid when one should. Here, traditional eco-emotion framed fear appeals can help, especially as we saw when they include actionable suggestions about how to respond to an environmental threat, for example, providing information about how to get involved in a climate change advocacy group. More technologically sophisticated versions of this could be developed by following in the footsteps of efforts that use VR simulations to induce fear in order to combat aggressive driving. I mean, it's like, yeah, use a computer program to simulate bad situations so that you can get some experience at this. Sahub says, I've meditated more than anyone I know. In the early years, I bowed my anxiety with comforting words like mother or father would do. You have to console and comfort yourself sometimes against irrational fears. Yeah, so you have to do whatever you can to get yourself into a better position before you can like rationally work on it. If you have to do like sort of like whatever works, irrational, whatever things to get yourself into a position where you can like not freak out, that's what you got to do. Like, that's why it's good to seek professional help, because then you can have someone that will be able to like help out with these things. But yes, I got to get back to like some sort of meditation. I'm not freaking out, but it would be good for me overall. Additionally, psychosocial support groups. Yeah, this is what I'm just saying. Psychosocial support groups can help people to move from, for instance, more socially focused climate fears. For example, fearing that one's denialist friends will treat you badly if you show climate awareness. To engage with the fundamental climate impacts, for example, the fires and floods that have recently plagued Australia. Techniques like these can also encourage pro-environmental action in individuals who aren't concerned, aren't scared enough to act in meaningful ways. Deploying the second strategy in type 2 cases where the culprit is less the fear and more a compromised sense of agency, the second strategy seems a better fit. Here the agency is not to change the fear, at least not directly, but rather to focus on enhancing feelings of agency. As we saw above, work with trauma victims suggests that the forms of what's called control-focused behavioral therapy, a treatment protocol that uses a distinctive type of guided exposure, can help individuals regain a sense of agency with regard to their fears. For instance, someone with PTSD from an earthquake can, through guided practice, come to see that they have the power not just to leave the room where they were in when the earthquake occurred, but also the power to come back in. While strategies of this sort have not received much attention in the context of shaping eco-fears for the better, the work of the environmental activist Jack Adam Weber emphasizes the importance of raising what he calls one's fear mark, one's ability to retain a sense of agency in the face of climate fears. As he explains, the higher our fear mark, the more effective we are at interfacing with climate chaos. Such courage grows with practice and support. Here too, techniques that help mellow intense fears can be helpful insofar as they can help individuals shore their feelings of agency. For example, breathing exercises or saying to oneself, it's understandable that I'm afraid, but I can handle it. Yeah, and so this is what we've been saying. It's like you have to figure out ways that you can have more agency. Dame Karen says a third of our country was on fire. It might have helped if they had listened to Aboriginal elders who have the history of thousands of years of knowledge to prevent them. Yeah, but that would require listening to brown people, and us white people don't do that. Yeah. So, I remember there was a story out of, I think, Southeast Asia somewhere, where a guy saw some really weird like way the ocean was looking, and he was like, you know, this is like that story that they used to tell us when we were kids about the tsunami. And he was like, he goes around saying like, look, it's like that story when we were kids, like that the elders used to say, and only in that town everyone got it to high ground because they're like, hey, look, it's like the tsunami's coming, and it's like this like story from like, you know, prehistory that saved the town, but like only in that town they all got out of there because like there was a story about the weird way the ocean looks right before tsunami. Yeah, I know, should learn. Say Hub, just avoid feeling comfortable with thinking or feeling you know the worst or the truth. You know, that was a very well said sentence. Say Hub is just easier said than done, as always. Yeah. I mean, a little bit of skepticism. You don't know the worst. You also don't know the truth. It's like you just can't. It's a little bit of skepticism there, a little bit of humility. It's like, yeah. Unreal says, I was living in Oregon when people seemed to suddenly realize that the native stories of a hurricane in 1701 were legit, and the place was actually on a massive asphalt For another big quake. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So tsunami. Yeah, exactly. It's like people did know stuff. They were. There's also something nowadays too where, we have all these recipes and formulas and these sort of like calculations. And there was, I forget who was looking. Maybe it was Teen Win. But he was saying like old cookbooks. They said, well, you cook it to like when you tap on it, it makes a certain sound. You don't cook it for like 40 minutes at a certain temperature. You cook it till it makes it like in under like high enough heat that it makes this kind of sound. And it's interesting because that's a subjective sort of way of understanding things. But it is actually a more accurate way of realizing when the bread is done when you tap it and it makes a certain sort of sound. Cooking it for 40 minutes at a certain temperature ignores all the variability in different people's ovens. So you should really cook it till it's done, not cook it for 40 minutes at like 350. And so like there's a lot of knowledge that has been just lost in our sort of technologization of knowledge and history. So it's not great. Yeah, Vipers. I think that might have been, there's been stories like that. Because, like, the one I'm thinking about, like, this guy was accusing his dad of being drunk. And his dad's like, no, look, it's like the way it was. And, like, so, yeah, I've also heard that story too, Vipers. 200-foot wave struck the coast. Yeah, the one I did, I remember the story was, the guy was like, his dad was drunk, and he was telling everybody, and his son's like, you're drunk. He's like, I'm not drunk right now. It's like, yeah. Operationalization. Thank you. Yeah, it gets hard to speak and think after a while when doing this. It just is. I'm getting towards 3 hours of streaming. This is a little longer of a paper than I want, but this is getting to the end of this paper. So, and I can't really swallow anymore, but I can still talk. Yeah, I can feel it like right here. Like, can't normally feel it on the outside, but I can. Okay. Where were we? Yeah. In a similar vein, strategies that seek to leverage the power of group dynamics can also be effective. We see this in the observation of the climate activist Anna Rose. Quote, courage inspires courage. So many people I meet have become active on climate because they saw someone step out of their comfort zone and risk something. Yeah, exactly. I'm not drunk now. Prof banned you? Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but he has his reasons, I'm sure. While Rose seems to be focusing on serendipitous occasions of courage prompting more courage, there are likely ways that occasions like these can be more actively promoted. For instance, strategies within the pedagogies of discomfort encourage students to move outside their comfort zones, but do so within structured, supportive environments that allow them to critically engage with their thoughts, feelings, and inclinations. So, for instance, the social work of scholar Vivian Bozalek and her colleagues developed a set of conversations about the legacies of apartheid among a group of racially and socioeconomically diverse university students in South Africa. They found that by encouraging students to reflect on and talk about their hopes and fears for post-apartheid South Africa, many were able to develop a sense of agency. While pedagogies of discomfort have traditionally been focused on education for social justice, there's increasing interest in deploying these tools in the context of climate change, education, and advocacy. Well, then you could, if it was really random, you could put through an unban request, and you'd see what would happen. But I'm not telling Prof how to run his channel. Summing up, we can now see how thinking about eco-fears within a broadly Aristotelian framework provides an attractive alternative to a more skeptical, cautious approach of scholars like Sobel. Moreover, combining Aristotelian insights about how to develop courage from fear with our empirically informed model of fear delivers a richer account of how we might structure efforts to promote eco-courage in our children and in ourselves. This in turn could launch a virtuous cycle where, as the activist Anna Rose points out, occasions of eco-courage can inspire more. Okay. Yeah, it's not really worth fighting them. So, over this sort of thing. It's only Twitch I mean, I got fucking suspended I got suspended a few weeks ago for the dumbest shit. Like, you can't, the platform is, it is what it is. All right, a looming threat, pathologizing eco-fears and stigmatizing the vulnerable. Even if we agree that the link between experiences of fear and pathology is weaker than researchers like Sobel suggest, the connection between labeling fears as pathological and subsequent harms represents a more significant source of concern. After all, it's well known that marking someone as, say, depressive can bring painful stigmatization, as can less direct labelings of individuals of the sort that we have seen when a person's fears or anxieties get marked as inappropriate, excessive, or otherwise misplaced. Suspensions on platforms like Twitch are done using computer algorithms. Yes, but I put through a suspension request, and they upheld the suspension. I'm sure it's dumb, but that's the point, is that there's so many dumb things on this platform that it's really not worth dwelling on all the silliness that happened here. Yeah. I mean, I know why I got suspended. It was just stupid. But they have a reason. It was technically sexual content, but everyone was clothed, and it was in a public place, and it was outside New York, so it was a newsworthy thing to be talking about. But what are you gonna do? Vipers is one of the dumb things on this platform, and maybe worth getting banned over. You might be worth getting banned over, Vipers. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, there is a good point that the authors just made here, that if you over medicalize something, you make it like a pathology, you can make it sound worse than it is to be afraid. It's not a bad thing to always be afraid. And so maybe you just say it's an excessive fear, and that will not make the person feel as bad. It might be the nicest thing. Oh, well, there we go. Okay. But our discussion here suggests a further cause for concern. Pathologizing fears, especially in ways that stigmatize, can undermine feelings of agency. As with the above, looking to eco-fear is instructive, for there is no shortage of examples where pathologizing language is used to describe eco-fears. And in many cases, this pathologizing talk seems intended to stigmatize the individuals it's directed toward. For instance, we have editorials in prominent newspapers with titles like this one from the Telegraph, quote, "Climate anxiety is driving the West into dangerous mass hysteria," end quote, which was accompanied by the pull quote, "Enough with the fear and loathing. If this is indeed a crisis, we should deal with it like grown-ups." Moreover, recall the research of the psychologist Maria Ohala discussed above. It reveals that skepticism is the prevailing response that many of the classroom teachers that she has studied have to the fears that their students experience when learning about the climate crisis. That's a terrible sentence. The pathologizing is problematic in a variety of ways. More obviously, these labels, however mistaken and misapplied, can still be internalized in ways that spur the development of pathologies or non-pathological, but nonetheless difficult feelings. Yeah, papers were we're sensationalizing? Surely not, of course not. Yeah. These labelings can also lead others to develop negative attitudes towards those who are targets of the labeling. On this point, consider how the climate activist Tori Tsui describes her experiences. She found not only that she was frequently ridiculed, scapegoated, and criticized for campaigning against the injustices of climate change, but also that this targeting severely undermined her health. Our account sheds light on a probable driver of her troubles. Being constantly branded disruptive, dangerous, delusional, or irrational undermines her feelings of agency, her sense that she could accomplish her goals. So what can be done? At one level, the problems here reflect deep systematic issues, sexism, racism, politics of hate, and the like, and so call for the large-scale and structural solutions. We don't intend to enter into that discussion here. Rather, in what follows, we focus on a few strategies that have promise for bringing local change by bolstering feelings of agency. Hub says, I think a lot of us don't care to think much about the amount of radioactive fallout from the 20th century, hundreds and hundreds of nuclear weapons tests. Yeah. There's lots of shitty things we did, and we have to deal with that. I mean, there's lots of... You can find a better, more healthy hobby like painting. Yeah, I mean, of course you could. But people want to fix the environment too. That's also a good hobby. So it's there's a lot of... We're going to be dealing with 19th to 20th century industrialization nonsense for a long time. So I don't know what yeah, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. All right. As an easy first move, we can do more to publicly acknowledge occasions of well-attuned eco-fear and eco-coverage, and to testify to the interconnections of fear, courage, and agency, noting, for instance, that courage is not absence of fear, but rather the ability to withstand and act on it. Public affirmations of this sort not only function to commend the individuals whose fear or courage is highlighted, but also work to both challenge problematic beliefs and norms about the appropriate emotion is and offer a better agency-affirming model. Here, consider the environmental studies of scholar Jennifer Atkinson, who has published essays with titles like "Addressing Climate Grief Makes You a Badass, Not a Snowflake." So yeah, I mean, this is such a throwaway thing. It's just like, look at the title of her paper. But I mean, they have a point here. But like, this is just sort of, again, a little bit of hand waving it like, hey, we should just encourage all the good stuff. It's like, yes. Conclusion. While our focus has been on eco-fear, much of what we say presumably holds for fear more generally. If that's right, then how we experience fear in general is intimately connected to the agency that we feel we have in the situation we're in. This would then have corresponding normative implications for how we ought to cultivate courage by way of engaging with our fears, as well as the strategies we should adopt in order to undercut the damage that pathologizing our fears can do. And that's it. Excellent. Okay, now what we do is we rate the paper. So everyone in chat, we've got a few people here still. I thank you for hanging out. This has been a lot longer than I had hoped or expected it to be, but what are you going to do? So if this had fun ideas, you use Braindance, and you do have to spell it correctly. So small b, big D. Latvian Jesus gave it a meh. Nog Screaming for existential artistic drama. Ouroboros for deeper ancient ideas. Nog Knife, slicing and dicing arguments. Nog Navel, navel gazing only for academics. Nog Turd, all style, no substance, still poop underneath. And Nog Grapes for big claims that shrivel up. And you also get to use the vote yay. That vote yay and vote nay are global, and vote meh is mine. So yeah, we're a bunch of yappers. Well, that's fair, but you're not rating your yapping, you're rating the paper. Yeah, and I make up some numbers based on your rating, and so basically the stuff in the green makes the score go up, the stuff in the red makes it go down, and the meh makes it just go towards the middle. So yeah. But thank you for the rating, Latvian Jesus, Say Hub, and Nep Fox. Yeah, so, you know, they do have the good point at the end. One of the reasons this paper was kind of nice was that it does talk about fear and the way that, like, you can deal with it, the ways that you can try to sort of understand how to make something out of your fear. And I think that's a good point. There was a lot of sort of dead air in this paper. I felt like they could have just, compressed this. I think it was a little bit longer than it needed to be. Viper's Knife, Grapes, and a meh. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a very sort of mid paper in some sense. I'm getting that from like a few people here. Omnifist says, I rate it up because it is timely. I'm afraid the earth is going to burn up. That's okay, Like, yeah. Brian liked it mostly for the topic. Yeah. So good topic. It's like, in some sense, I appreciate people working on this sort of like a good topics. I sometimes have a soft spot for this. But to be fair, this is not a paper in a journal. This is from a edited collection on the philosophy of fear. So it's like maybe the editor deserves credit, but like, yeah, it's still a good idea in general. And I think a lot of the arguments here could have been tightened up a bit. Paper could have been shortened. Like I was saying, I said they had some terrible sentences. All they had to do is put it in terms of how powerful you feel you are in any situation, and that made it, the whole thing just sort of like, that makes much more intuitive sense to people. So yeah. So Sayhub says, I see Earth's climate as extremely resilient and dynamic. I worry more about the sun and space weather objects that are rogue and unexpected. Those are checkmates for Earth. I am not worried about, like, yeah, we could get hit by an asteroid and all die, but I'm not worried about Earth. Earth will be fine. We, on the other hand, cannot handle a long time of bad weather. The Earth will be fine on like geological time. We, on the other hand, are going to die. And so it's like, yes, the Earth climate is extremely resilient and dynamic. Maybe not on our time scale though. And so that's really you got to be more worried about, yeah, the Earth is going to be fine. Life will go on. Will our life go on? I don't know. Uh, there you go. Yeah, you become homeless, and then you don't even have to. Yeah, you barely any carbon footprint. It's amazing. All right, so what am I gonna say for this? I mean, I think the Ouroboros is actually the idea that you're talking about fear. It's that's not actually like it's, you talk about fear is like this. That's a deep ancient idea. Karen says humans are screwed, but also in terms of space objects, we'd probably get hit by our own space junk, which is plentiful. Yeah. Unreal says, I'm kind of okay with us suffering the consequences of our stupid choices. I agree for all the other life forms that are getting fucked by what we're doing. Yeah, I don't like the idea of like that many people dying. Like, I just don't. So it's like, yes, do we deserve it? Kind of, but the people getting fucked by it were not the people that did it. So it's like those humans in the future that are going to be fucked by all of our bad decisions now are not the ones, like the people now are not going to suffer because of it. So they're just, pushing the thing off into the future. I'm gonna give it a vote meh maybe, and I feel like a nog not navel almost because well it's not really only for us. So yeah. So you ran into someone hype at NASA asked for you for advice for cleaning up space junk. Did you have any good ideas, Omnifitus? I mean, you could. So yeah. All right. So everyone else, like if you want to get your rating in, now's the time. We give you another minute or so to try it out. I gave it, it wasn't that bad of a paper. I feel like, I gave it a Met and an Ouroboros. That's an okay, like, it wasn't slicing and dicing. It was all style, no substance, still poop underneath. It was a little bit of not grapes. I understand why Vipers gave it some grapes. It made some big claims and just sort of hand waved at them. But, magnets, how do they work? No one ideas. Yeah. Thanks for coming online, streaming being the philosopher I am. No, thank you for coming by. It's like why I do it is, I want people to see that philosophy is not as crazy as they thought it might have been. You can do it. You can take a look if you just got to put time and effort in. It is one of the conceits of the show that like it is a good idea just to read and explain philosophy. This is extremely difficult. It is very hard. So not like any old idiot can do this and do it well. This is difficult, but yeah, but I still like the idea of it. So you think the paper could be used as good toilet paper if it's printed on soft paper? Yeah,